Hey everybody, it's Mike with Monkey Fab. Today I just wanted to go over the car. So if you joined me last Friday, you know that I went to my old school, the School of Automotive Machinists in Houston, and we talked, and the plan is to put the Phoenix on the dyno, take it to the tuning, they have a tuning school there, and we're going to bring it there, leave it for a couple days for their class to go through it, work with the system a little bit, work with dyno tuning it. And it should be a good deal for them. With that being said, when I was realizing that, I coordinated with their tuner and I told them, hey, I'll send you the information on the vehicle, and I thought I could just maybe grab one of my YouTube videos and send it to them. Here's a comprehensive kind of deal. And my YouTube station channel doesn't really work like that. It's just kind of it's more like a vlog than it is a. I thought that it would be a good idea to just make a simple video going kind of over the entire car, what's in it, what the intent behind the car is, and that way there's somewhere that if you're joining the series, you can kind of jump in at that point and say like, okay, I get what's going on, and I can also use it to send to the tuning school so they can understand what they're going to be working on. So without further ado, this is my beautiful. Right, so here is my beautiful 1978 Pontiac Phoenix. It is GM X body. It's the same as the Nova, and I believe the Ventura. I'm not sure. There is a bumper, chrome, real chrome, and an exhaust system laying over here along with part of the coolant reservoir. So just know that needs to go back on the car, obviously. So it is a DOD, I believe. It's the equivalent of the L33, but I could be wrong on that. It is a 4th gen, so it does have the stronger rods in it, and it's all aluminum. What I've done to the block is I pulled out all the DOD stuff and put in an LS9 cam. I thought that'd be interesting to do, and it fit what my intentions were at the time. I put in PAC 918 springs. I just went through the springs that were available and looked for something without a ton of pressure, installed pressure, but I didn't want, obviously I wanted something better than what the stock had to offer, but something that wasn't quite as punishing to the valve train as like some of the dual spring options that are out there. So that was a good fit. We'll see how it does. We'll see how the valve stability goes. I'm not 100% on that. It's better than stock, not as good as the dual systems out on the market. I have those if it's needed. The head gaskets were replaced, obviously, because we would never use a stock head gasket, matte, and I put in Chinese head studs. So it's other than that, stock. It's the 243 heads and an intake that came off a truck that wasn't with the motor. I got a motor and a 4L80E together for, I want to say it was like $400 or $500. It was ridiculously cheap. But I said, hey, I'll just take it. I'm not going to look at it, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't work, then I just ate it. So they took the deal. Sometimes the gamble pays off. So I've already had this up and running. It works great like this, but the drive train from the engine back, the transmission and rear end was all stock. It was a 350 Hydromatic and a 7.5-inch open diff, and it was on its last leg. As you can go back and check out the videos, and you'll see how bad that looked when we pulled it apart. Injectors are Siemens-Deca 80s right now. I do have 1500 snake eaters that are direct drop-ins for the Siemens-Decas. There'll be stock coils on either side. The turbo system goes from a stock manifold on the driver's side, the passenger side, and goes underneath the bell housing up to this guy, which ties in with the rest of the engine, and it is going to a VS Racing billet 7578 turbo, and a VS Racing 44 millimeter. It's like a tile knockoff clone, and that just goes to a dump pipe. I've had this. It ran as low as 3 psi, so it's terribly efficient at getting at keeping the boost stable. So I don't know. I do have a choke point. I've kind of ran this system with not a lot of cares given, so that does actually go down to like a little bit less than 2 inches on the crossover. I don't know. You know, we always can cut and weld, so we'll see how that works out. The engine management system is a Mega Squirt Gold Box from EFI Source, and that is, I have to make a nice little fancy center console for the inside for it to sit under, you know, something around here, but it's just laying in there kind of plugged in. I have the tuner studio with all the fancy features and stuff unlocked. So is there anything else? It has a fuel pressure sensor, you know, full host of sensors. It will have air conditioning. I just replaced the one that I originally put on there with this smaller unit, and it is going to go to a shop here in town that's going to plumb the air conditioning. It's got a transmission cooler, and it is the stock, it's a new stock replacement air radiator for this year. I like the fact that it fits perfect, and I like the fact that it cools perfect. I have no trouble in the hottest of Texas days keeping this guy at below 160 degrees, using a thermo switch off of the upper radiator hose. That's wonderful, but I hate the fact that I have to somehow get the hose all the way across to the other side. It's kind of a pain. I'm on my like third iteration of Frankensteining that hose together, but yeah, so it's done, it works, and I'm just gonna have to deal with it, is I think what we're gonna go with. The stock suspension, it's all stock up front and stock brakes up front, stock wheels up front. That's gonna get changed for C5 hubs and C5 brakes, just not the fancy Zeo whatever, just regular old, which are big. They're like 13-inch. This is a 14-inch wheel, so you can imagine 13-inch brakes on this guy are going to be a nice upgrade. The back is billet. I think they're called Mustang billet. The like 2005 to 2012 Mustang had these guys. The offset works with the axle, and I'm happy with that. The interior is just like cherry. You know, it doesn't get much nicer than that. You could have a Cadillac, or you could have a Pontiac Phoenix. So the gauges, I kept the stock gauge cluster, as you can see here, and all this stuff works except the light. So we need to rip it apart and figure out why I can't see the speedometer at night, because the light bulb is burnt out or not grounded or something's going on. But this was all just like idiot lights in here, and it had no function. So it was just like it's a generator and a light, and it had a sign over here that said Pontiac, and that was it. So we've added oil pressure, which is coming off a sensor that feeds the turbo, and we have the water temp, which is off the upper radiator hose. We also have the water temp tied into the computer off the stock gauge, and that has a more accurate reading for what's going on in the engine. But I can watch this guy here and just see, you know, if I can obviously tell there's a problem if it goes up. It barely moves, and it rarely hits 160, and that seems to be fine. Like I said, I've had it out in the hottest days. The gas gauge does work, and then I had to find a pressure gauge, so I just found this 1 through 60 psi pressure gauge and just put it in there, because I was limited to this little 1.5 inch kind of deal, and that's what we made it work. And it has a closed loop AEM air wideband and a little tachometer. I think I'm going to do a shift light up here somewhere, just to kind of manage it. It's the column shifter, and it's a manual valve body. And then if we look down here, there is a fuel pressure gauge, but unfortunately you really can't see it, so it's not very functional. I mean, you can check it to see what's going on, but you have to consciously, you know, look around, and that is, it's annoying. Uh-oh. Did I turn off the exposure again? So
I do have two fuel pumps for this guy. One is a constant fuel pump, you know, obviously it runs everything. The other one comes on at 3 psi. So what I do have already plumbed up here is there's a wire already ran, but I'm going to run a little LED just somewhere in obscure so I can see it, you know, it'll light up, and I know when I'm flooring it that, you know, as long as that light's on, the pump should be on and that everything should be good. And you can see the air fuel ratio gauge is pretty visible right next to the tachometer where it needs to be, so you can keep your eyes on the important stuff. Whoops, I keep hitting that exposure button, damn it. So gold box, it'll make a center console and kind of clean things up. It's pretty nice in here. It's a nice place to be for a 70s vehicle. The body's super straight. There's no rust. I've went ahead and kind of gone through the whole thing. I'm gonna leave it just kind of this stained brown, sun bleached kind of deal. The trunk is, I mean, you could do a mob hit and take out an entire family with this guy. Here's my Frankenstein hose that I was speaking of, wideband sensor, dipstick that needs to go in. I need to add that to my list of to-do things. The wiring for the fuel pumps is 4-gauge wire going directly to the battery in the front, so it comes all the way from the battery directly to the relays, and our fuel pumps are not going to be starved for clean ground or fuel signal or electrical signal from the battery. Like I said, these are Mustang billets, and it's got the 8.8, and I'll lift it up and show you the underneath now. So looking underneath the Phoenix, I have completely coated it with rubberized Eastwood rubberized chassis undercoating stuff, so it's all nice and undercoated. And if it wasn't that, then there's some black, what is it called, this stuff, I love this stuff, it works great, rust tough. So it has the oil filter comes off the block. It is, I'm sorry, the turbo oiling comes off the block. It is pre-filter, that galley right there, so I ran it into a second filter, and then it goes up and feeds the turbo. And right there is our inside oil pressure gauge. We also have the stock one, but it is not currently hooked up to the computer because it doesn't come in the wire harness. But all this up here is pretty much stock other than the 5.3. I don't think there's much to say underneath here. I made my own mounts. I basically just welded these guys. It's a little bit of square tubing here, and I just welded them onto the frame rail. It lined up real nice with the factory mounting system, and I just made this out of 1-inch thread awl and some bolts. I used this bushing thing here is rear shackles for a truck, leaf springs, and I made the whatever. And same with the turbo system. Right here is where it's kind of necked down a little bit from the 2-inch. But like I said, I can always fix anything. No big deal. Cutting and welding is kind of my deal. We've got a TDI, I think it's called, a TCI transmissions flex plate that's SFI spec'd and all that good stuff. We got a Jake's budget converter that was spec'd out for this specific car with it set up. We have a TH400, it's a built 400 that my friend did for me, Cameron Powers from Sloppy Mechanics, and it's a manual valve body with the regular pattern. So it goes from your just normal shift. So we pull it all the way down and you go into first, and then you bump it forward for second and bump it forward for third, and there is no fourth because it's a TH400. That's all good. It's got I have a transmission temperature gauge that needs to be installed on the inside. The wires already ran for that as well. And we have a drive shaft. It's got the fancy Sunex billet chromoly thing and a big 3.5-inch deal we picked up from Randy's. You probably saw me do that the other day. And what I don't have is I did not have the kit to install it, so we ordered that off of Jigs, and the kit with the ARP bolts is coming to get that installed. I believe that takes care of the front. The exhaust is a 3-inch that comes across and then goes into a resonator and a muffler and then comes out the back. And the other side, it comes straight shot right through to right around here. I have a boost activated flutter valve that makes it just an open dump pipe which gives me a 3-inch straight through exhaust that dumps right before the axle. Speaking of the axle, it is off a 2006 Mustang. It is a 31 spline. I changed out the ring and pinion gear. It was 355. It is now 315. It should be perfect with the tires I have and the transmission to be cruising on the freeway all day with no drama. New springs because the other ones were rusted out and blown out, and we were missing leafs. So we placed new springs, new hardware for all of that, new shock absorbers. Don't have the parking brakes hooked up just yet. Still got to skin that cat. We retrofitted the Mustang anti-sway bar into this, because before it came without any kind of sway bar. So we added this guy with these billet end links and crossbars that ties it all together as one piece, which seems to be working really well. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. The fuel tank, we modified the stock fuel tank and put a sump on it. It has 3 AN10 fittings. 2 of those will go to shutoff valves and go to the filters and to the pumps. That'll be wide down to a post filter, and it shoots up to the car. It is 2 380 pumps. It is all PTFE fuel line that goes from 10 to feed the pumps to 8 out the pumps. The check valves are actually in the head of the fittings on these pumps. It's kind of a cool little deal. It shoots up, around, and back down over the transmission, up the back of the engine and into the fuel rail, all -8 all the way up, and it is 3/8 stainless steel line back. So this system is, I should say, back to the flex fuel content sensor, which is right here, and then spits back into the sump, which keeps fuel in the sump. I was returning it to the stock feed, and this works out much better. It keeps the fuel, the feed happy. So that is the fuel system. That second pump comes on when this T feeds up to the hob switch that I showed you in the back here, and opens up the valve and turns on the fuel pump. So we have lots of fuel to feed this guy. Hopefully it should make decent numbers on E85. 245 45 17s for now. I do plan on ordering some custom offset wheels that will be able to stick 275 60 15s on the back of there, but these are going to be like the daily cruisers because I'm able to order some similar looking wheels. I'm not super happy about this, but it is what has to happen. I tried to get Steely wheels, and I spent $300 to have them just not fit. So lesson learned. Go with what you know works. I know these guys work. I'm gonna do the front in a similar kind of wheel style to cover the soon-to-be C5 brakes. We'll need 17-inch wheels, and that should take care of that. The car sits a little high. I'm okay with that. It's Houston. A little ground clearance isn't bad, and it's going to add to the lulls when you smoke people that shouldn't be smoked by a car that looks like this. So I think, let me try. Here's our intercooler pipings. So I think that I've covered everything. Intercooler is 4 inches, big and wide. It's 4 inches deep. It is, I think it's like 26 or 28 by like 18. It was like the biggest intercooler I could possibly fit in here. So that should keep the engine happy, the air temps under control. And yeah, so I'm sure I've missed all kinds of stuff, but I think I've covered the gist of it. So the car itself is going to be daily drive across the country, air conditioning on, surprise people every once in a while, possibly take it to the drag strip, see what it'll do in the 8th mile, and that's it. I want to leave it the color that it is. If I can tone down the wheels a little bit to help add to that motif, that's great. But I'm really happy. When I first saw this car, one of the kids from school, the Sam school that's going to be tuning the car, was driving this thing from Nebraska. He bought it for like $300. I paid him a ton more than that to get a hold of this car, but I love it. It just reminds me of my childhood. We owned ugly ass cars like this that I was horribly embarrassed of when I was a kid, but now it makes me happy. So I'm embracing the ugliness, and yeah, so that's the overview for the Phoenix. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry if it's not me tweaking and working on things. That's coming soon. I got to finish all this up so we can get it to the dyno for the guys to do. Once we get to the dyno, maybe we can, if we have a good experience, those guys are happy. I got all kinds of cool things like extra cams and springs and heads, imported heads and intakes and stuff. Maybe we can keep tweaking on it, kind of just see how different combos make. That'd be fun if that works out. But yeah, lots of work to do on this. I made a list of all the stuff I got to do. I got 2 to 3 weeks to get it all done, according to our conversation with the school, Sam's. And if you want to check them out, I'm going to drop a link in the description below to go to their school, samtech.edu. But otherwise, I appreciate you all for dropping by, checking out the video. And until next time, this is Mike with Monkey Fab signing out.